Fusion Mobile, quality e-learning experience on the go.
Okay, so in this segment, we'll be looking at African poetry. Now, you must note that there are some specific recommended texts that are required for the WAEC syllabus. So, we'll start off with poetry, African poetry. First off is Ambush by Gbemisola Adeoti. Now, it's first of all, we'll look at the background of this poem. Now, when we refer to background, we are looking at the events or happenings that informed the reason for this work. Now, Ambush as a poem looks at post-independence Nigeria. It was expected that after the advent of democratic rule in 1999, after several years of military dictatorship, it was expected that Nigeria would thrive in a new era, in a better era. But unfortunately, according to this poem, the poet looks at the corrupt practices, the oppositions, and the tyranny of leaders, corruption in terms of embezzlement of funds, looting the treasury, and other related vices, grift and graft. Now, the ensuing atmosphere of gloom in this land, Nigeria, is actually what inspired this poem, Ambush. Now, when you look at this word, ambush, ambush means attack. Now, it is not surprising that the poem begins on this note. The land is a giant whale that swallows the sinker, with hook, line, and bait, aborting dreams of a good catch. Now, the subject matter in this poem is the nameless nation referred to is land. It is likened to different predators. The land is a giant whale. That is a metaphor used, which portrays the people suffering under the ruling class. He used animals of water and land for his imagery. The land is likened to a giant hawk, a bird, a dangerous bird that attacks smaller birds. The poet sees the land as an agent of frustration to her people's hope at every turn. Now we'll be doing a stanza-by-stanza analysis of this poem. Of stanza 1, which is from line 1 to 7, the poet represents the land as a giant whole. This is further driven home by his addition of a bait to an otherwise popular and familiar idiom of hook, line, and sinker. It aborts dreams of a good catch. Fishers turn home at dusk, blue Peter on empty ships. Now the poet also makes use of the allusion whereby, if you remember the story of Peter in the Bible, who toiled and toiled and toiled to catch fish. And this is also what is happening in our nation, where people toil, people pay their taxes, and yet they are not reaping the fruits of their labor because of corruption among the ruling class. Moving on to stanza 2, it says, the land is like a sharp saber-toothed tiger. A tiger is a dangerous and ferocious animal. It is so dangerous that it preys, it bullies other animals in the jungle. Now, this is also illustrating the ruling class, the corrupt government. Now you find out that the poem looks at people who are helpless. You find out that there are a lot of people who have been thrown into prison and nothing is being done because they do not have the power. The poet also looks at the misuse of power. It says here that the land is a saber-toothed tiger that cries deep in the glade, while infants shudder home. while people who are powerless, who do not have this position, they shudder at the cry of the tiger. The grizzled ones snatch their gods from bayonets of tribulation. Stanza 3, which is line 14 to 16, the land is referred to a giant hawk. You see, note that this poem makes use of metaphors. Giant hawk, saber-toothed tiger, giant whale. These three animals, they are predators that bully smaller animals in its way. The atmosphere of the hawk in the sky is hovering and hooting. It is usually portraying danger. By noting that the land courts unceasing disaster, the poet draws attention to the danger of killing people's dreams and hopes. We live in a land, in Nigeria here, where there are so many youths that want to dream. A dream of living a better life, becoming someone. You know, they dream of a bright future, but they thrive in a land whereby their dreams are trampled on. So this is the predominant issue that Gbemisola Adeoti is examining. Now we'll move over to the themes. Now, in any work of art that is trying to explain an issue, that is why we have themes. Themes are the central ideas that are being portrayed in a work of art. Now, the poet looks at the theme of destruction. Of course, the word here, ambush, it depicts destruction, danger. So, in every work of art, especially in this aspect of literature, we have themes. Now, the themes in this poem, Ambush, the first predominant factor is the issue of destruction. Now, as the term ambush implies, ambush means attack. Now, the theme of destruction dominates the poem. The poet's land is a place where opportunities for growth, self-development and fulfillment and hope are lacking. The youths cannot dream. The youths cannot actualize their dreams because of ambush, because of corruption among the ruling class. Now, we must take note that Gbemisola Adeoti is not just referring to Nigeria. Now, African poetry, you must take note that African poetry also examines the predominant problems that are occurring in Africa. Now, he uses Nigeria as a case study, the situations in Nigeria as a case study. Now, the destruction that is depicted in this poem is not just physical, but also psychological, mental, and also economic. To further highlight the destructive potentials, we are informed that it lays ambush for people who are exploring possibilities of hope. That is why the nation is plagued with ills such as insurgency, unemployment. You find out that people cannot dare to live up to their expectations because of ambush. Another theme we will examine is intimidation and frustration. Now, you will notice that these themes, they are interwoven. They are interwoven together. Intimidation suffered by common people of the land is commented on. In the face of overwhelming, ruthless power of the state, the common people are afraid. Now, they are afraid in the sense that they find it difficult to fight for their rights. We cannot fight for our rights because of the problem with the politicians, because of the problem of corruption. So the people are weakened by these intimidating factors. In addition to intimidation, the land also causes the people a lot of frustration. People's efforts are undermined and their dreams of fulfillment are frustrated. That is why we'll see in the reference to the poem in line 7 where it says, all Peters with petered out desires. This is an allusion to Peter in the Bible, who toiled and toiled and toiled fishing but could not get any catch until the master came to deliver him. Another thing we'll be looking at is abuse of power. We thrive in a country where the ruling class, they are not satisfied with the stipulated time given to them to rule. A politician who is meant to rule for 4 years would delightfully extend it to 8 years. This is because they are interested in looting the treasury. They are interested in dwelling in the seat of government for their own selfish gains. Now, like I said, we are not just looking at Nigeria alone. This is also the problem that is predominant in Africa, and that is why leadership in Africa is retrogressive, because of the problem of the abuse of power among the ruling class. Now, we said references are made to the giant whale, the giant hawk, and the saber-toothed tiger. All these animals exploit, they use their strength and their size to exploit smaller animals. That is what is being portrayed here. As noted earlier, the state's sovereignty is meant to be used by those entrusted with it to improve the quality of people's lives. The power that is given to these people have been voted with the hope that they will make things better for the people. But the reverse is the case. So now this leads us to last thing, which is despair and hopelessness. You find out that, like they say, for every action, there is a reaction. You find out that these issues, they are interwoven in such a way that this is the end result. The people are in despair. They are hopeless. They are helpless because there's nothing they can do. There is much hopelessness in the land. Obviously, the fisherman that was referred to in the poem represents the working class. They work and they toil, and there is nothing to show for it. Others who equally experience or perceive frustration in the land decide to turn in another direction. But this possibility is again ambushed, making the people more in despair. Now we'll be looking at the poetic devices used in this poem. Now, first off, the poet makes use of metaphor. Now, if you remember during our class on figures of speech, remember that metaphor is the use of a direct comparison or a direct reference to something. Now, the poet makes use of the giant whale, a saber-toothed tiger. Now, let me explain this term, saber. Now, this word saber means sharp. It also portrays something that is like a knife, that is very sharp. Now, if you look at the dentition of a tiger, it's sharp and ready to pounce on a prey. So that is what the poet is trying to illustrate here. Saber-toothed tiger, giant whale, and hawk. Now, we also look at the use of personification. He said the giant whale, the hawk, are agents that have been brought to the land to her current unenviable state. Now, they are also, we said the personification is the use of human attributes on inanimate objects. Now, you find out that these hawks, tigers, they are typified as humans who met out wickedness on the people. The poet also makes use of repetition. We find out that the terms land, giant, and dusk, they are being made reference to. Structure. The poem is a 21-line verse. When we talk about structure in poetry, we are looking at what the poem encompasses of. The poem is made up of 21 lines divided into 4 unequal stanzas. The first comprises of 7 lines. The second stanza has 6 lines. Each of the first 3 stanzas focuses on different features of the land, while the last stanza concludes the poem. Now, a question. Attempt a metaphorical interpretation of the poem. Attempt a metaphorical interpretation of the poem. When you say look at the metaphorical interpretation, we are saying, in other words, examine the use of metaphors in this poem, which we have emphasized severally on. The saber-toothed tiger, the giant hawk, which are used to portray the leaders. Now you must take note that there are some questions. Some of these questions will pop up on your screen. They will be displayed on your screen so as to determine how much you have learned in this class. Thank you.